Delhi's winter evenings have their own rhythm. Narrow lanes cloaked in silence, the air heavy with wood smoke, and the scent of dinners being prepared behind closed doors. But on one such night in January 1996, this Delhi silence was broken by something unimaginable. Inside a quiet home in Vasant Kunj, a nightmare unfolded, one that everyone around had feared, one that the victim herself had warned of, and one that chillingly would go on to change the country. This is the story of that Delhi evening, that one Vasant Kunj home, and the one woman who found herself stuck behind its walls in the company of pure evil. This is the story of Priyadarshini Mattoo. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Ashwarya.
And I'm Aryan.
And the case that I have for you today is one that has fundamentally changed this country.
Mattoo is a name that I have heard in the realm of crime, perhaps through listener suggestions or maybe like listicles about India's, most popular crime stories, but I know nothing about this case.
This was a case, the recommendation of which came to me from my mom.
Okay.
And it's a case that has struck with her for a very long time, and something about her really kind of tugs at her heartstrings. Yeah. Maybe she's the mother of a daughter.
But it's given auntie is a therapist and has seen all kinds of wackadoodle things. For something to tug at her heart means...
must really be something.
Messed up.
Is it something?
One thing that tugged at auntie's heart recently was the fact that her daughter and daughter's better half, when it comes to hosting a podcast, wrote a book, the Desi Crime Book, which is out now wherever you get your books, which could be Amazon, which could be a bookstore. If you're an Audible person, the audiobook is in our voices. Links are wherever you want to find them, in the description, or just head over to Amazon. But please buy this book. Because I want to be, able to say I'm a national best-selling author.
Right.
But also because the book has received immense love, not just from the media, but from you guys. The Amazon reviews that you have left, and we hope you'll continue to leave.
The stories you guys tag us in, it's all really adorable.
It's so
We'd
good.
love to see the book in your hands. So head to your nearest bookstore, go ahead to the links in the description of this episode, go to Amazon, get your hands on the book. This story begins on the early evening of January 23rd, 1996. In the quiet lanes of Vasant Kunj, New Delhi, house help Virendra Prasad left home for his usual chore, walking the family dog. The winter air carried with it the familiar mix of burning wood and fragrant spices, a warmth against the evening cold. When he left that house, house B107098, to take the dog out, the only person inside the house was a 25-year-old third-year law student, Priyadarshini Mattoo. She had locked the door behind Virendra, a safety basic in India, and had gone back to studying for her upcoming law school exams. But when moments later, around 5:30 p.m., personal security officer Rajinder Singh and another constable arrived at the home as scheduled, something stood out as odd to them. The front door stood slightly open. That was unusual. Priyadarshini, who would be inside the house at that point, always kept it shut.
Why does she have a PSO?
We're going to get to that.
Whenever somebody has a PSO in our stories, I can think back to Suhaib Ilyasi, a bunch of other stories. It doesn't bode well.
No, you know that the tragedy is probably been
there's
coming
something
for a
in
while.
the making.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the PSO usually is not able to do too much to prevent it.
Right.
Even
we're laughing, but it's actually really sad. This woman had a PSO and a constable, both of whom arrived at their home.
In
and
the
it was
Suhaib
too late.
Ilyasi case, there was a PSO. In the T-series case of the founder, Gulshan Kumar, there was a PSO. Nothing much the PSO could do.
Right. Now, a chill ran down Officer Rajendra's spine. He had been assigned to protect Priyadarshini, and something now, in this moment, felt wrong. You see, coming back to Aryan's question, Inspector Rajinder and the constable with him had been assigned to protect Priyadarshini for the last 1 year because she had been stalked. After multiple complaints filed and countless visits to the police station with proof, these two officers had been assigned for her safety. Within moments, house help Virendra returned with the dog, and the three men lingered at the threshold, calling out her name softly into the silence. But no answer. Despite the knocks and the calls, though, the house seemed quiet, still, eerie, and that is when the men decided to step in. As Officer Rajinder moved to the bedroom where Priyadarshini should have been, he stood dead in his tracks. All he can see is blood. Blood on the room's mattress, blood on the floor. When he manages to gather himself and glances around the room, he then sees a hand protruding from under the bed. He yells for the other constable. Together, they lift the bed and uncover Priyadarshini's lifeless body. Her jeans are partly pulled down. The electric cord from the room's heater is still looped around her neck. Blood oozes from her mouth. Her face is swollen. The scene is horrific. Rajinder's hands shook as he fumbled for the radio. House help Virendra stood frozen in the doorway. For a moment, the sounds of the lane, the children playing, a pressure cooker whistle, faded into silence for him. He feels his stomach churn as he tries to stop the family dog from darting inside. This was the same dog that Priyadarshini had walked countless times before, the same dog she'd fed biscuits to that morning, who was now pulling his leash so tight as if he too could sense something wrong. Virendra recalls how she laughed when the dog shook water onto her vibrant laugh that had slowly faded as she began fearing her life over the last year. Now, as Virendra peers around the room, he sees a smear of blood on the wall and realizes that Priyadarshini's worst fear had come true that evening. In that moment, he thinks of his own sisters back in his village and wonders how a human could commit such a brutality. He steps back, nausea rising, and grips the gate to steady himself. Later, he would remember the metallic scent of blood mingling with the fragrance of fried onions from the neighbor's kitchen in that surreal winter dusk. Within minutes, one of the constables rushes to the police station, and slowly those quiet lanes in Vasant Kunj are filled with police cars, onlookers, and neighbors. Inspector Surinder Sharma, the station house officer, records the first report at 5:45 p.m. and begins cordoning off the entire area. Investigators record strands of hair, broken pieces of a helmet that doesn't seem to be in the house, and blood samples. They take photographs with flash bulbs, capturing the brutality in grainy images that will later be plastered across newspapers and eventually television screens. As the police continued their work, at 7:30 p.m., the front gate of the home swung open. It was Priyadarshini's parents, Chaman Lal and Rajeshwari Mattoo. They see police tape and a crowd outside their home. Chaman Lal pushes through, his heart pounding. A policeman tries to stop him, but he forces his way inside regardless, and the moment he sees his daughter's body, he lets out a wail. Rajeshwari collapses on the floor. They know quickly from the condition of their daughter's body that their world has shattered. Earlier that afternoon, Chaman Lal and Rajeshwari had sat through mundane civil court proceedings at the 30 Hazari court in Delhi, expecting to wrap up early and return home for tea with their daughter. They had laughed at a friend's joke about lawyers who dragged on cases and had made plans to visit relatives the following weekend. As they drove back through Delhi traffic, they discussed the price of vegetables probably. Nothing in their conversation hinted at the storm waiting for them. When Chaman Lal heard the cries and saw the flashing police lights, he knew instinctively something was wrong. Neighbors would later recount how his scream pierced through the corridors and how Rajeshwari's body went limp as she collapsed on the steps and just couldn't get up. This moment, on this day, marked the end of Priyadarshini's life, but also the beginning of a fight for justice that would echo across Indian homes for generations to come. But to understand the how of why this day even came to be, we have to go back in time to understand how Priyadarshini's story began. Priyadarshini Mattoo was born on the 23rd of July 1970 in Srinagar in Kashmir to a loving and middle-class Kashmiri Pandit family. Her early childhood was filled with the sights and sounds of the Kashmir Valley, almond trees blossoming in spring, saffron fields turning purple in autumn, the hum of prayer at the local temple. Her father worked as a chief engineer for the Power Development Department of J&K, and her mother managed the household with calm dedication. They instilled in their children a love for education and a belief in fairness, all of which made Priyadarshini a curious child. She devoured books, asked endless questions, and argued about everything from bedtime to politics. In 1989, when militancy escalated in Kashmir, the Mattoo family, like thousands of other Pandit families, packed their belongings and fled. They left behind their ancestral home, leaving keys with neighbors they might never see again. They carried with them only what they could fit into a suitcase: photo albums, a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and a handful of jewelry. They spent nights in crowded camps in Jammu, braving heat and mosquitoes, uncertain whether they would ever return. Priyadarshini was 19 at the time, old enough to understand that she'd lost more than material possessions. She'd lost a piece of her identity. Despite these upheavals, though, Priyadarshini continued her education with unwavering relentlessness. She completed a Bachelor of Commerce degree in Jammu. Family friends from the time recall her reading legal thrillers and telling them she wanted to help people fight for their rights. Also known for a sense of humor, she could mimic Bollywood actors to precision and lighten even the darkest conversation.
I was about to say she sounds like you, but then you said she has a sense of humor. And I'm like, oh, that's not
That's
you.
so funny. He thinks this was funny. I mean, let us know in the comments if that joke passes the bar. Then, in the early 1990s, she moved to Delhi to pursue an LLB at Delhi University's Campus Law Center. It was a bold move for a Kashmiri woman in her early 20s. Delhi was a bustling, often intimidating city, but Priyadarshini embraced it. She joined debate clubs, volunteered with legal aid groups, and discovered a passion for criminal law. She often traveled alone on buses and auto rickshaws, navigating the city with a mixture of caution and confidence. She lived at first in a co-educational hostel at the Institute of Economic Growth, then at a relative's home in Rajouri Garden, and later at the home of Lieutenant Colonel S.K. Dhar in Safdarjung Enclave, before eventually moving into her uncle's flat, flat B107098 in Vasant Kunj. Each move represented a new chapter, a new network of friends, and a new level of independence. Priyadarshini's dreams too, like her, were straightforward but ambitious. She wanted to practice law and perhaps become a judge later down the line. She talked to her father about wanting to start a law firm that offered affordable representation for women who couldn't afford lawyers. She sometimes told her mother that she wanted to change, quote, the system that lets powerful get away, end quote. She was deeply spiritual, reciting Kashmiri hymns but also embracing modern ideas. Her friends described her as, quote, modern but rooted, a woman who could wear jeans and argue constitutional rights in the 1990s, and in the next breath prepare a traditional Kashmiri haq for dinner. No one could have guessed that just one man's obsession would end each and every one of these dreams so quickly and so violently. And this man, it wasn't some stranger she didn't see coming. He was a part of her world. Santosh Kumar Singh was born into privilege few other men in the country grew up with. He was the son of J.P. Singh, an Indian police service officer who would later become the Joint Commissioner of Police in Chandigarh. Santosh grew up in the official bungalows with domestic help and security staff. He attended good schools, rode motorcycles, and bragged about his father's influence. By the time he enrolled in the campus law center, he had a certain air about him that only powerful connections can confer. And then he noticed Priyadarshini for the very first time in 1994. He was a final year student and she was just in her first year. He started by casually bumping into her where she was likely to hang out, then beginning conversations about offering to help her with her studies. Then he began waiting outside her classrooms just to catch a glimpse of her or exchange a few words. When she expressed disinterest, she saw the first flashes of anger in him, and by early 1995, those flashes of anger had turned into full-blown harassment, stalking, and all forms of assault. He began following her across campus, revving his bullet motorcycle to get her attention, embarrassing her in front of her campus classmates, professors, and friends. Friends recall him telling her, "You will be mine, whether you like it or not." When she rebuffed him again and again, he began calling her repeatedly at her residence, leaving notes on her desk, and once even turned up at her hostel with gifts that she refused. By January of 1995, Santosh began following Priyadarshini on his bullet as she drove, and once even tried to force her car to stop at a traffic light. That's when Priyadarshini lodged one of her first police complaints, this one being at the R.K. police station, after which Santosh was detained and made to sign an undertaking not to harass her before being let go. These complaints to the police and their consequences were clear examples of Santosh using his father's position to intimidate her. Every time Priyadarshini reported him to the police, he was called to the station and asked to sign a statement promising to stay away. He complied superficially, only to appear again the next day, knowing nobody could touch him.
Basically, he's telling the police, I promise I'm not, like, fingers crossed, I promise I'm
Absolutely.
not
Pinky
going to do
promise,
it.
I'm not
Pinky
doing
promise.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We know how that turns out. We've seen that as well in so many of our cases. These
Honestly,
undertakings.
I've seen undertakings singular. I've not seen multiple undertakings upon several complaints of harassment.
Some of our domestic violence cases did have
Right,
multiple.
but this seems like a clear abuse of power,
Absolutely.
allowing you to, like, the fact that you've signed a statement and you're still being accused of harassment again is a violation of the statement.
Correct.
Thereby, another promise will not be accepted, but clearly in this case it was being accepted again and again. Yeah,
Right.
that's a privilege not many enjoy. I mean,
Absolutely
I
not.
wish I could just, walk into a police station if I've done something wrong. Hopefully I haven't, and just
Just
go,
sign something, yeah.
katti abba with
Yeah.
the SP. Yeah, that's not how it works.
Then, in August of 1995, Santosh tailed her home to Vasant Kunj and even tried to break open the door of her residence, after which Priyadarshini called the police and filed another complaint. Yet again, he was let off after giving a written promise to stay away. Now, if all of this is frustrating to you to listen to, imagine what it felt like to Priyadarshini, who was so irritated, so scared, so frustrated that she actually asked the police to leave her complaint pending and not close it, just out of fear that he would throw up again. In one of her complaints, Priyadarshini even mentioned that he had threatened to acid attack her if she did not accept his advances, which became one of the first indications of his truly violent tendencies. But he seemed to relish the cat and mouse game, always staying one step ahead of the law because he knew the lawman. When his charm, candor, lavish show of affection, or even physical threats did not move Priyadarshini, he resorted to more intimidating forms of harassment that actually had real life ramifications for her and for her education. In October of 1995, Santosh filed a complaint with the University of Delhi, alleging that Priyadarshini was illegally enrolled in 2 courses simultaneously. He followed up with 2 reminders on the 4th of December and then on the 20th of December. The university, rather than immediately dismissing the complaint or holding an investigation of some sort, withheld Priyadarshini's LLB 5th semester result. It was a way of exerting control for him. He could derail her education simply by writing a letter. When she submitted her response, clarifying that she had not violated any rules, she lamented that her academic career had become a pawn in someone else's obsession. But the harassment didn't stop at paperwork. It was after this, in October itself, that Priyadarshini approached senior police officials along with her father. They met the Delhi Police Commissioner and the then Deputy Commissioner of Police of Southwest Delhi on the same day. She formally reported Santosh's behavior to them, after which authorities assigned her a personal security officer for protection. Yet, despite this protection, Santosh's stalking did not stop. When even the PSO assigned to her couldn't help in the way she needed it, she ended up filing a written complaint with the Dean of Delhi University's law faculty about Santosh's harassment on campus. The Dean, quote, admonished Santosh and advised him to desist from such activities, end quote. This shows she tried every avenue, both law enforcement and university authorities, to stop him, but nothing seemed to work. After once trying to break into her apartment, Santosh then began turning up at her uncle's Vasant Kunj house at odd hours regularly, where he revved his motorcycle outside her gate, scaring her neighbors. Another time, he threatened to, quote, teach her a lesson in front of her uncle. Each time, she did go to the police, and the complaint was dutifully recorded. Yet he faced no real consequences. The police ticked him off, but never arrested him, citing lack of legal provisions for stalking. When they threatened to file a case, his father's calls came swiftly, and again, no real consequences followed. Then in November of 1995, in perhaps Santosh's most overt attack on Priyadarshini, he grabbed hold of Priyadarshini's arm in the campus law center and just refused to let go. He violated her physical space, and at that moment, she had no idea how far he would go to hurt her, even in a public place. Thankfully for her, that incident didn't escalate further, which sounds so unfortunate, but she went ahead and filed a fresh complaint. This time an FIR number 129 by 95 under IPC section 354, which is assault or criminal force to outrage a woman's modesty, which was registered at the Maurice Nagar police station. After which Santosh was arrested for this incident, a rare consequence, but was quickly released on a personal bond, which is basically a written promise, again, to appear in court. Despite this brief arrest, he faced no serious punitive action, and the harassment resumed almost immediately. By this point, Priyadarshini's parents had gone so far as to visit Santosh's father, the high-ranking IPS officer, and begged him to control his son's behavior. They, quote, asked him to make his son stop troubling Priya, end quote, but their plea went unheard. As the year was nearing its end, Priyadarshini was living in a state of constant vigilance. She had switched her addresses several times in an effort to escape him. These moves underscore how she was forced to live like a fugitive, constantly looking over her shoulder and never feeling safe at one address for long. She eventually installed heavy bolts on doors and kept a kitchen knife under her pillow. Now, 15 months had passed since the stalking and harassment began, and those close to Priyadarshini saw the toll it had taken on her. She was a quote, nervous wreck by December 1995, as her brother described. She became unusually anxious and jumpy, according to those close to her. She even told friends she'd feared she'd be killed. Despite this, though, she refused to leave Delhi. She wanted to finish law school and stand up to him. Her father often asked if she wanted to return to Jammu, but she would reply, "If I run away now, I'll have to run all my life." And so she stayed. For her own sense of freedom, she stayed. Despite half a dozen reports filed with no action, she stayed and she watched right as this pattern of abuse escalated and continued right up until the day she died, which is a part of her personality I really came to admire when I was researching this case.
Aishwarya, as a citizen, she has done almost everything she could
Yeah.
to safeguard herself.
Mm-hmm.
As a 2B lawyer, she has also done everything she could
Yeah.
to safeguard herself. In fact, it is important to know that what she is facing is something many women in
Right.
India and across the world face. I think she has the privilege and the knowledge of being able to actually exert her civil rights and fight for them. The multiple complaints she's filing is something most women cannot do.
That's
But
right.
given her legal background, she's able to not just have access to the police station, but know what to apply for what particular part of the IPC stalking or assault may fall under. She's done all of that.
Yeah.
And clearly to no avail. I was just thinking that if this were to happen in today's day and age, right, in 2025, this is a woman who would be driven to the point of posting on social media about this man, more likely than not. And we often, when we see kids in college, when an incident has taken place, whether it be stalking or a bad breakup, anything in this realm, sometimes when people post stories about the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator, there is this response of, this is not the correct medium
That's
to
right.
be doing this.
Yeah.
But it's stories like this that make social media the correct medium to do it. Because honestly, if there was a social tag on this man for what he was doing, the stalking he was doing,
Absolutely.
it would have put a spotlight on him.
And it would have remained permanent record forever.
Permanent record forever that this woman
Publicly available record.
is complaining
Yeah.
against this specific man. So yeah, while we might have that gut instinct against, this case shouldn't be discussed on social media, this is private,
we never
sometimes
truly know.
we never truly know. And I think the beauty of social media and getting, not mob justice, but like sort of social media justice for people who have tried all other avenues is, a commendable aspect of social media that usually goes,
Absolutely. Because there is something so helpless about imagining 1990s India where all of society has said, this is it. Like, we
Yeah.
can't do more. Hands up.
Yeah.
This is it. But while Priyadarshini could almost sense this day coming closer and closer to her, the day that something would go terribly wrong, that day in reality began perfectly mundanely. It's one of those days that, when recounted, feels like watching a slow motion train wreck. You want to scream at the characters to change their course, but you can't because it began mundanely. At 9:15 a.m., Priyadarshini drove her parents to 30 Hazari Courts. They had a civil matter to attend, but she left them there and went to university for a lecture from 11:15 a.m. to noon. Her PSO Rajinder Singh accompanied her. The lecture ended and she searched for her parents at the court but couldn't find them in the chaos, so she just decided to return home at 1:45 p.m. At that point, she told PSO Rajinder that he could retire for a while and return at 5:30 p.m. because all she planned to do that afternoon was stay inside the house and study the hours away. She thought she'd be safe inside as long as she kept the home door shut and just waited for everyone else to come back. After all, her house help Virendra would be inside too. She wasn't going to be totally alone. Back at the flat, she cooked a simple lunch, rice, dal and vegetables, and shared it with Virendra too. But after that, at 2:30, Virendra said he had to leave to run some errands. That's when she changed into jeans and a sweater and settled down to study. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the living room. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional bark of a family dog. Eventually, Virendra returned and took the dog out for his routine evening walk, leaving Priyadarshini all alone once again. After this, she may have taken a quick nap. She may have listened to a cassette tape of Kashmiri folk music. We'll never truly know. As the afternoon faded, Priyadarshini's anxiety mounted. She kept glancing at the clock. 4:45 p.m. Her PSO was due at 5:30 p.m. But today time seemed to slow. And then at 4:50 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw the one person she would be happy to never see again. Santosh, standing outside with his black helmet slung casually over his shoulder. He smiled, the kind of smirk that had haunted her for months. He said he just wanted to talk, but she hesitated. But refusing might provoke him, and she had seen the consequence of that provocation before. And so she opened the door just enough to peek out, keeping her hand on the edge to slam it shut if it needed. But he forced his way in. Around that time, the neighbors later described hearing muffled voices coming from within the house. Then a heavy thud. Then another. And another. Santosh's frustration and years of entitlement had exploded into violence inside that home. That is when he raped her. Her screams were stifled, first by hand, then by the electric heater's cord that he wrapped around her neck. He strangled her until her body convulsed and then went limp. But it didn't stop there. He then picked up his motorcycle helmet and repeatedly smashed it into her face. Once, twice, over and over, 14 times in total with that helmet until the bones in her face cracked and blood sprayed all over the room. The dull sound of that helmet against her head echoed through the small flat. Then he dragged her under the double bed, perhaps believing he'd concealed his crime, wiped his hands on a curtain in the room, picked up his broken helmet, imagine the force required to break a helmet, and calmly walked out, closing the door behind him, but leaving it slightly ajar for Priyadarshini's PSO to notice just a short while later. Outside, Santosh was seen by the building's security supervisor, Jaideep Singh Aluwalia, and a neighbor. They watched him adjust his collar, mount on his bullet motorcycle, and speed away. Nobody stopped him. After all, he was the son of a senior police officer. After this, PSO Rajendra Singh arrived and covered the bloody scene, and Virendra returned with the dog to realize the family he worked for would never be the same. After the police collected everything they needed to, Priyadarshini's body was sent to the Safdarjung hospital for a post-mortem, where the doctors catalogued 19 injuries, including 3 fractured ribs, bruises on her chest and arms, and swelling of the brain. They confirmed that the cause of death was strangulation and documented injuries consistent with rape. This autopsy would later form a crucial part of the prosecution's case. With the crime scene now dealt with, the police now turned their attention to their primary suspect. And Santosh was not hard to find. He lived with his parents in Delhi and worked as a junior lawyer. Police picked him up for questioning during the night of January 23rd as it turned into the 24th. Inspector Lalit Mohan noted swelling on Santosh's right hand and sent him to Safdarjung 2, where doctors observed 2 injuries, a swollen right hand and multiple old scars on his chest and legs, and also conducted an X-ray which revealed a fracture of the 5th metacarpal bone, consistent with striking a blunt object. Police took his nail scrapings and hair samples and then released him on a promise to return the next day. The following day, the Commissioner of Police received a letter from the Chief Secretary of Delhi requesting that the case be transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI.
Wait. What?
Yeah.
Why?
That's some swift movement.
Why?
I think the number of police complaints that Priyadarshini had filed.
I thought the CBI demand was like a pressure tactic from the dad to move the agency to one where he might have more influence.
By Santosh's father? No, we don't have any records of that. That possibly could be
because usually
a situation.
moving it to the CBI actually bolsters the investigation.
Correct. So I doubt it's that.
Yeah, but I've never read about investigation being taken on by the CBI so quickly.
That early.
If nobody of great significance of in culture is involved.
No, for whatever reason this case is different. Again, I don't think it's quite that the father thought he had more control over the CBI. That just sounds really weird and out of the ordinary for me to make sense of. I think the number of police complaints, the brutality of the crime, it happening in a high profile area like Vasant Kunj. This was a law student as well, who had experienced so much harassment. She had a PSO assigned to her. I think they perhaps knew that there would be so much backlash for everything that's gone down up until now. This letter to the CBI, like I said, noted that Priyadarshini had filed a complaint against the son of an IPS officer and that the family lacked confidence in the Delhi police. Within hours, the CBI did take over, and suddenly the Mattoo family and activists felt like they were experiencing real progress and a shot at real justice. The CBI had resources, national jurisdiction, and theoretically more independence. However, the CBI's investigation revealed deep flaws in India's forensic and legal infrastructure. At the time, DNA fingerprinting was a relatively new technology in Indian courts. The CBI sent samples of blood, semen, and hair to two different forensic laboratories. The first lab reported that the DNA samples matched Santosh. The second lab reported that the samples were too degraded for conclusive results. And needless to say, defense lawyers seized on this discrepancy and argued that the CBI had contaminated the evidence. They even argued that the hair found in the body could have come from someone else entirely. Moreover, the CBI's chain of custody was questionable. The helmet visor, a key piece of evidence, was allegedly kept in an officer's drawer for days before being sent for analysis. The electric cord was touched by multiple officers without gloves. Witness statements were not properly signed. Even the time of death was contested. While some forensic experts placed it around 4:30 to 5 pm, others suggested it could have occurred slightly earlier, raising questions about whether Santosh had enough time to leave unnoticed. The Mattoo family stood on the sidelines and watched with growing frustration. They believed the CBI wanted to appear thorough without actually securing a conviction. They suspected interference from Santosh's father, who was still a senior police officer. When journalists asked CBI officers about the case, the responses were guarded. One senior officer privately admitted that the investigation was complicated by, quote, pressure from above. But then, in a positive move for everyone fighting for justice, the charge sheet on the case was finally filed in April of 1996, naming Santosh as the sole accused. More than 50 witnesses were listed, including neighbors, security supervisors, doctors, forensic experts, and police officers, and the CBI invoked Section 302 and 376 of the Indian Penal Code. The case seemed strong on paper. Yet, as the trial approached, many activists feared that sloppy investigation would let him slip through the cracks, as happened so many times in the country. The trial began more than a year later, in August 1997, in the courtroom of Additional Sessions Judge G.P. Thareja. Over the next 2 years, witness after witness took the stand. Neighbors testified that they saw Santosh at the house on the day of the murder. The security supervisor described watching him walk out of the building. The domestic help recounted seeing his motorcycle outside while walking the dog. Doctors detailed the injuries on Priyadarshini's body, leaving the courtroom silent as they described the brutality. Forensic experts explained how blood on the broken visor matched her blood. Yet, the defense cross-examined aggressively. They pointed out inconsistencies in witness statements. They questioned why the PSO arrived late that day. They seized on the conflicting DNA reports, arguing that the technology was unreliable. They cast doubt on whether the chain of custody had been maintained. They even suggested that someone else could have entered the house through an open window. Without CCTV, there was no visual record of the crime, and the prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. Judge G.P. Thareja faced a dilemma. He found the circumstantial evidence compelling, but incomplete. He enumerated 13 circumstances linking Santosh to the crime: his presence at the scene, the history of harassment, the broken visor with her blood, the injuries on his hand, the timing of the call to the police. But he felt bound by the legal standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. In his 3rd December 1999 judgment, he wrote that he was convinced Santosh committed the crime, but, in a blow to the case, acquitted him for lack of conclusive proof. He criticized the CBI for, quote, deliberately bungling the investigation and lamented that he had no choice but to let Santosh go free because he could not convict on moral certainty alone.
What a bold and audacious
Verdict.
verdict.
I know.
I don't think we would see this sort of thing happen in today's
Sure.
polity, because for for the judge to stand up against the CBI in such a bold way,
Yeah.
I don't think will be politically
Where literally
correct.
you're saying this is a guilty man,
This is
but
a guilty
he's
man. I
letting
know he's
go
guilty.
free because of you.
And honestly, a verdict like that helps, I think, the layman understand what that bar for
That's
justice
right.
is, and helps them understand that of course judges sometimes let go of privileged criminals because of that privilege, and because of things happening in the background that are not spoken of.
Right.
But sometimes they let go of them not because they're bad judges, but because in fact they're good judges.
That's
And
right.
they have a certain legal bar, guilty beyond reasonable doubt. And this clearly sounds like an investigation
that.
where I think there was enough evidence, it just wasn't investigated thoroughly, presented correctly.
Correct. And
Oh,
too many loopholes like chain of custody, like keeping evidence in a drawer. You're giving defense material to rip through
Yeah.
you in court.
Please tell me this gets better and it doesn't end
There is a
here.
lot more that happens and it doesn't end here.
Okay.
Regardless of what Aryan thinks of this judge, though, needless to say, this verdict elicited outrage across India. Newspapers carried headlines like "Killer Walks Free" and "Justice Denied Again." Talk shows dissected every line of the judgment. Chaman Lal Mattoo told the press that the system had betrayed his daughter and that there was a nexus between the police, the CBI, and the court. Women's rights groups organized protests outside the courthouse and in all parts of the city. The case became a symbol of how the powerful manipulated the system. For the next 6 years, the case file rotated in the appellate registry. Santosh resumed his legal practice. He
No
married
way.
and had a daughter. Yeah. When men like these go on to have daughters, it just, I don't know what's scarier. You know, I feel like when you have a son and you're a man like this, you will raise
Yeah.
another man. And if you have a daughter, God help her to live with the trauma that you've caused another woman. I don't know what is more tragic. Santosh continued his life, all while Priyadarshini's parents knocked on every door they could. Politicians, senior judges, activists. They filed petitions, wrote letters to editors, and waited. For the Mattoo family, time was measured not in days and years, but in court dates and adjournments. But then, the case that was seemingly going to go nowhere and was going to become just yet another miscarriage of justice saw a major change in February of the year 2006, 10 years after the day of the murder. What happened in February 2006? India was rocked by another miscarriage of justice. The acquittal of all 9 accused in the Jessica Lal murder case. For those of you who haven't seen our episode on Jessica and don't know her story, she was a model who was shot dead in a Delhi bar in 1999. And the accused, sons of powerful politicians and businessmen, were freed due to lack of evidence.
That guy, the killer of Jessica Lal, by the way, he did end up going to prison and was released a few years ago. And if you've ever tasted India's best whiskey, as some allege, Indri whiskey, you should know that he is the founder of that whiskey brand.
And for those of you who don't know the full story again, what is ironic about this is that he had shot Jessica over a glass of alcohol that she
Yeah.
refused to serve him after the bar had closed.
His name is Manu Sharma, for those of you who don't know.
Right. An ironic twist of fate. So, with Jessica Lal's murderers acquitted in 2006, the public erupted. Candlelight marches across Delhi drew in thousands and thousands of people. The India Gate saw protests daily. Television channels ran non-stop coverage. Students held placards reading, "I am Jessica." The outcry forced the government to reopen the case, and the High Court eventually convicted the main accused. The wave of outrage swept over not just the nation, but also over the murder of Priyadarshini Mattoo. In fact, after the Jessica Lal acquittal, a 16-year-old schoolgirl, whose identity has never been disclosed to protect her privacy, filed a petition in the Delhi High Court demanding a hearing in the Mattoo case. She argued that if the system could reopen Jessica's case, it could reopen this one too. And her petition lit a spark. Student groups across Delhi University and the National Law School of India University organized protests demanding justice for Priyadarshini. They circulated petitions on Orkut and Yahoo groups, early social networking platforms. They sent SMS chains urging people to join vigils. Law students wrote mock judgments highlighting how circumstantial evidence could support a conviction.
मुझे बहुत बुरा लग रहा है. He should not be spared because he has killed that girl mercilessly.
They held public discussions on death penalty jurisprudence. Reuters reported that the case became one of the first early examples of media activism in India. On any given evening in mid-2006, you could find students at Jantar Mantar holding candles, chanting Priyadarshini's name and calling for, quote, "justice delayed but not denied," end quote. Journalists revived interest with in-depth investigations. They criticized the system's failure to curb stalking. They pointed out that while Santosh's father was promoted to Joint Commissioner of Police, Priyadarshini's family was still struggling to pay legal fees. The coverage humanized her, moving her beyond the sensational headlines and portraying her as a daughter, a sister, a student whose aspirations were crushed. The Times of India interviewed law students who described their determination to see the case through. Chamanlal Mattoo, Priyadarshini's father, attended every protest. He became a familiar face on television, a frail man with thick glasses holding his daughter's photograph, his voice shaking as he spoke. When he met students, he would tell them stories about Priyadarshini, how she loved Kashmiri music, how she wanted to start a free legal clinic, how she would call him after class just to say she was safe. He told them he wasn't fighting just for his daughter, but for all daughters. His wife Rajeshwari rarely appeared in public. She grieved quietly at home, lighting incense sticks in front of her daughter's photograph every morning, in her own quiet form of protest and prayer. And the activism worked. In August 2006, the Delhi High Court agreed to hear the appeal. The court's docket, usually clogged with thousands of cases, carved out a special slot. The students who had caused this chain of incredible events stilled interest and went on to organize courtroom diaries where they posted daily summaries of the hearings online. Each day's progress was shared via text messages and transmitted across the city and sometimes even across the country. With all of this pressure mounting, the CBI, now under scrutiny, prepared meticulously. The stage was set for a showdown between an emboldened citizenry and a justice system on trial. The appeal was heard by a division bench of Justice R.S. Sodhi and Justice P.K. Bhasin. For months, arguments were presented. The prosecution re-examined witnesses, reinforced the DNA evidence, and emphasized a pattern of stalking.
I'm guessing Santosh had to appear in the court for these
Yeah,
hearings. So he would have been roughly 39, 40 years old
Right.
at this point, and if she were to be alive, Priyadarshini would have been 36 years old.
Right.
As much as this case is another indictment of the fact that justice was delayed, it is not delayed to the degree that some cases we have covered are, because honestly in many cases we do where there is a murderer, the case goes on for 20
Right,
years.
you don't even get to an
You-
appeal
you
or
don't-
activism
exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
So for him to be on trial again at
in a
39,
10-year span.
having relative to all the other cases I've seen, I'm still like, thank God this
Yeah.
is sooner than what it could have been.
And there is something to be said about a certain pessimism our generation has towards the legal proceedings in this country. You go back to these older cases, whether it be that Indian Oil case we covered, whether it's this one, whether it's Jessica Lal, you will see a generation much less equipped than ours to cause a chain of crazy events that will
Yeah.
go on to actually manifest in real time legal ramifications. And these people have done it. These young kids, they have stood out in the heat, in the cold. They have
Yeah.
stood out for days, for months. They
You
have,
know, when older people and young people who want to come off as perhaps too suave or mature for their age like to write off protesters as hippies wasting time and a nuisance to society, an unproductive nuisance to society. Opinions I might be guilty of sometimes too, when I
and maybe
don't
some protests do exemplify that, like whatever.
Sure, maybe this wouldn't have happened without the protests.
Yeah.
This wouldn't have happened without a 16-year-old
Yeah.
who thought that I can take on the Indian legal system.
Right.
And that makes me tear up in sheer joy at the fact that
Yeah.
you can cause change. You
Absolutely.
can shake up an entire system if you so decide.
With a lot smaller voice than most of us have today.
A lot smaller voice. So, I mean, I'm so glad. I hope it ends the way I'm thinking it's going to end. But I'm so glad it took the direction that it did.
In court, the arguments continued. Prosecution presented documents showing that Santosh had filed the malicious complaint to the university. They highlighted his fractured hand, the broken visor, all the same evidence as before. The defense again tried to chip away at the chain of custody. They argued that the High Court should not overturn an acquittal based on circumstantial evidence. They claimed the helmet's visor could have broken earlier. They suggested alternate theories. Maybe an unknown intruder committed the crime. Maybe there was jealousy or property dispute. The judges, though, asked tough questions. And this time, on 17th October 2006, they delivered their judgment. That day, the courtroom was packed. Students huddled in the aisles, television cameras lined the corridors. In a crisp but searing verdict, Justice Sodhi pronounced Santosh guilty of rape and murder. He read through the 13 circumstances enumerated by Judge Thereja and methodically explained why each pointed to guilt. He dismissed the defense's theories as speculative and criticized the CBI, but said that despite their lapses, the evidence taken together was overwhelming. The sentence hearing finally took place on 30th October 2006. In his statement on sentencing, Justice Sodhi acknowledged the difficulty of imposing the death penalty and quoted the Supreme Court's jurisprudence on rarest of the rare cases. He noted that Santosh, being the son of a police officer and a lawyer, should have been an example of law and order. Instead, he stalked and killed a woman, ignoring warnings from the police and promises he had made. Justice Sodhi then said the words that would reverberate across the nation. For a crime of this sort, there is no sentence but death. Outside the courtroom, the crowd erupted. Students embraced. Some cried tears of relief. The Mattoo family collapsed in each other's arms. They thanked the court, the activists, and the media. It felt like closure. Television channels flashed "Death for Santosh" in bold fonts. For the first time, many Indians felt that a court could deliver justice against the powerful. But if you know Desi cases, you know this joy can often be short-lived.
God, Aishwarya, why?
Why? You
get
tell
te-
me why.
Why get me teared up? Why give me hope and then just pull that rug from under my feet?
Everything said and done, this was still a lot of positive movement. Where we end up, we're about to find out.
Okay.
Santosh filed an appeal to the Supreme Court, represented by a team of seasoned lawyers. The bench comprised Justice Harjeet Singh Bedi and Justice Chandramouli Kumar Prasad. This time, arguments focused not on guilt, but on sentence. The defense highlighted several mitigating factors. First, Santosh was around 24 at the time of the offence. At the time of his High Court conviction in 2006, he had remained free for 7 years, during which he had married and become a father. His father died shortly after the High Court judgment, leaving his mother dependent on him. The defense argued that he had never been a repeat offender and that the High Court had overturned an acquittal based solely on circumstantial evidence. They stressed that the death penalty should be imposed only in cases where life imprisonment would not suffice. The prosecution yet again argued that this crime met the rarest of rare threshold. Then, on October 6, 2010, came yet another judgment, where the Supreme Court upheld the conviction but commuted the death sentence to life imprisonment.
Supreme Court has given a life sentence to Santosh Singh. Your first reactions?
You see, we had hoped and expected that the Supreme Court will uphold the verdict of the Delhi High Court in view of the fact that they had pronounced that the criminal has committed the rarest of the rare crime and justified death penalty. Well, our family, we feel utterly disappointed and shattered, so much as the civil society.
The court acknowledged the crime's severity, but said that when the court itself hesitates between life and death, the lesser punishment should prevail. They noted that there was no evidence Santosh could not reform and emphasized the time lapse. 14 years had now passed since the crime. For many, the commutation felt like a betrayal. Chaman Lal Mattoo told NDTV that he was shattered and that civil society is in danger if sentences are lowered. Women's rights groups argued that courts put more weight on the convict's family than on the victims.
Aishwarya, what do you think about the commuted sentence?
I actually respect the sentence.
Yeah, same. I think, firstly, I am against death penalty. It's
In
something
general,
general.
I agree.
So I would want to avoid it for every case that.
And I think we as a country do a pretty good job at when
we do. I don't agree with the fact that it's a bad precedent to lower and commute sentences. In fact, it is a very good provision in our law to be able to do that. But also the fact that the mitigating factors are crucial, not the circumstantial evidence being what overturned the sentence, but the fact that it is the court's fault that so much time, or it is the CBI and the judiciary's fault that the man was acquitted and was then given 7-8 years to live a normal life, in which he had kids and in which then he had more people that he is responsible for. Because whenever you give somebody the penalty, you need to understand the other people that are also being penalized in the process. Of course, the weight of the criminal's family shouldn't be the same as the weight of the victim's family. I agree.
Yeah.
But these are mitigating factors which the court is responsible for.
I don't know if I necessarily agree on this front. I think we're a country of so many people with so many cases. The fact that cases take time is
It's not a function of taking time, Aishwarya. It's a function of calling him
right,
innocent.
letting him be, letting him free off
calling
out
him
into
innocent,
the world. I
giving him the
understand.
possibility of saying you will always be free, basis which a man will take the decision to lead a certain kind of life. Again, I'm sure he knew in all of this he was guilty. I'm not talking about this man specifically. I'm just saying any person,
Yeah.
if let go and you are innocent, right? Once you're given the mark of innocent, technically you are innocent forever. It is
Right.
very rare cases where innocence is reversed and the case is reopened. This is very, very rare. In fact, in the US, it is
double
not
jeopardy
double
law.
jeopardy law doesn't allow you to do this.
Yeah.
Right. So there are
For reasons like exactly this one.
for reasons like this. Now, again, does this have extreme cases where a double jeopardy law prevents justice from? Yeah,
Sure.
it does, but it also safeguards.
I don't know
people.
how I feel about his family being the reason he should be let off
Not
easier.
his family only. I'm saying mitigating factors. combined.
This one being, I think, the most significant one for him. His father has died. His mom is dependent on him. He has a child. He has a wife. I don't know how I feel about all of this being the reason that he should not receive a harsher punishment. I think when you commit a crime and you are in a country where there is no double jeopardy law, please be ready for the ball to drop if it does, if there is more evidence ever, if there is another petition filed, if you're taken to court a second time. Please be ready for your life to unravel around you, as it should perhaps, and as it would for any criminal if they are sent to prison.
I don't know if I agree. I think it is the court's mistake, and I don't know. I struggle with this, and I guess I'll have to read more and think more before forming an opinion that I get married to. But I think life imprisonment. Listen, I would be more than happy if this fellow gets the most extreme version of punishment that our law allows, which happens to be the death penalty, which I'm not a big fan of. But I want him to get the most adverse punishment. It's just that if a court is overturning its own decision, it shouldn't be as straightforward as the full extent of law can now strike down upon this man, because there is a reason double jeopardy exists, and to me there is far more nuance that is involved in
100%.
deciding the punishment if you are reopening a case where you have given the man the
13 years. Yeah.
13 years of innocence. And again, it's not 13 years of a case being dragged on. That's very
Yeah, no,
different.
it's not, yeah.
It's you as the court deeming him innocent and saying, go out, you're a free man, acquitted.
Sure.
Which is different. So I'm also just trying to process it.
That being said, I do respect the decision of bringing down
Yeah.
the verdict from a death penalty too. Obviously, there is a sense of wanting justice done,
Yeah. No,
especially
and I feel
against
bad
powerful
if-
figures in society. And the impulse is the death penalty should be given, but I think as a precedence, it is good if we can rehabilitate someone, if we can have a functioning member of society, if we can have him be in prison for the rest of his life and have him still somehow be a figure to his daughter, be a support to his wife, to his mother in some way, shape or form, and become a better member of society. I think we're always better off doing that. But while people were outraged by this new verdict, there were others who saw nuance as well, just like Aryan said. Many scholars said that the Supreme Court's decision respected the constitutional preference for life over death, while still recognizing the guilt. Justice R.S. Sodhi, in subsequent interviews, criticized the Supreme Court's approach, saying that it underestimated the cruelty and persistent harassment inflicted by Santosh. The debate became a case study in law school. Does the rarest of rare doctrine require death when the crime is barbaric? How much should a convict's age and personal circumstances weigh? The answers were not clear-cut. After the Supreme Court's decision, Santosh was moved from the death row cell to the general population at Tihar jail. For the first few years, he struggled. Fellow inmates called him a spoilt brat, mocking his earlier arrogance. He spent much of his time reading legal books and writing appeals. As years passed, he adapted. He taught other inmates basic legal rights. He joined a literacy program teaching illiterate prisoners to read Hindi and English. He also participated in vocational programs, carpentry, tailoring, painting. He earned certificates for good conduct. In 2010, he enrolled in a Masters of Law, an LLM program, through Indira Gandhi National Open University. He studied under kerosene lamps and attended contract classes when permitted. In 2017, the Delhi High Court granted him 15 days of parole to sit for his LLM exams. The parole came with strict conditions. He had to remain in Delhi, report to local police daily, and avoid contacting the victim's family. The parole order noted that he had completed 14.5 years in jail, had satisfactory conduct, and had never misused parole. After the exams, he returned to jail without incident. He eventually earned his LLM degree. Rumors circulated that he wanted to take the bar exam, but the Bar Council of Delhi objected, citing his conviction. By 2023, he had spent more than 25 years in jail. Under the Delhi prison rules, life convicts who had served 20 years can seek premature release, and so Santosh filed a petition before the Sentence Review Board in 2021. The SRB consists of senior bureaucrats, prison officials, and police officers, all of whom rejected his plea, citing the heinous nature of the offence, and noted that he was convicted of both rape and murder, because of which early release would send the wrong signal. Santosh's lawyers argued that he had undergone profound reforms, studied law, and served more than the minimum required period. They pointed to other convicts with similar or worse crimes who had been released after 14 to 16 years. And because of those arguments, in July 2025, Justice Sanjeev Narula of the Delhi High Court overturned the SRB's rejection and ordered a fresh review. Justice Narula criticized the SRB for a blanket policy of rejecting pleas in heinous crimes without considering individual conduct and psychological assessments, and ordered that future reviews include mental health evaluations. The order sparked renewed debate. Supporters of release argued that the justice system should allow for redemption. After more than 2 decades, what purpose does continued incarceration serve? Opponents pointed out that the convict had never apologized or expressed genuine remorse. They argued that releasing him would be a slap in the face to the Mattoo family and to other victims of gender-based violence. Others said that in a just society, even those who commit heinous crimes must have a path to return if they truly reform. And today, as of September 2025, we await the results of this new development while Santosh still sits in Tihar jail.
Oof. I mean, this case is rife with literal legal philosophical dilemmas.
Questions, yeah.
And legal philosophy is something we studied in college as well, and they are debates that are easier to have in a classroom where moral constraints don't exist.
Of course.
But having it here with a public audience, I'm thinking twice before what I say, because some of the things we'll say are more from a 30,000 feet kind of viewpoint, which sometimes may or may not be, may or may not seem empathetic, but the law when written is their words, and words don't always reflect one's empathy. And before I say what I want to, I'll give you guys a small example of how the legal philosophy and individual story clashed in a great US presidential debate.
Okay.
I think it was the presidential or vice presidential debate. In the 1988 US presidential elections, the front runner was a governor named Michael Dukakis.
Okay.
Now,
Never even heard of this person.
And Michael Dukakis, we can put a clip up for you over here of that. And in the US presidential debate, which for those of you who don't know, it is tradition in the US that the president nominees debate each other on live television so as to show who is better. It is a way of holding them accountable, and something frankly that I love about their presidential elections. And Michael Dukakis was the front runner. This answer is single-handedly responsible for why he lost those elections.
Okay.
Now, the death penalty was in contention at the time. And in the US, death penalty is not a federal law. It's a state law. And so some states have it and some states don't. He was against the death penalty. And that was his policy, and one of the policy that he wanted to make part of his mandate. One of the questions he was asked by the moderator was that, should your wife, Kitty, be brutally raped and murdered, would you not want the perpetrator to be hung?
It's a question in bad taste, but sure.
I think it's a very good question.
Sure.
Because it pins to, you can say death penalty is bad, but what about the millions whose loved ones are the victims of brutal crimes? What will you say to them? And his answer, after thinking for 2-3 seconds and being flustered, clearly flustered, his answer was, no, I wouldn't want it. And I think he means that.
Yeah.
Except that's not how you answer that as the presidential nominee. And I've often thought how I would have answered that. For what it's worth, him saying no showed a level, did not resonate with the American voters. They thought, what a sick man to not want the rapist
I actually
and
really
murderer.
respect that.
Aishwarya, the way he said it, and for
something
the
was off.
time he said it in,
Sure.
more the time, it wasn't digestible. And again, a president's and a politician's duty is to make hard things digestible.
But my question
I'll
here
tell you,
is the other answer that he could have given, would that have saved him?
and I've thought about what I would say, and it would be something on the lines of, would I want the death penalty for him? Yes. But imagine if all laws I make were out of emotion and not logic.
Yeah.
We all have emotions, and so do I, regarding many things. But if I let those emotions take control of energy, of education, of global policy, if I let my ego come in, I will not be a good president.
Yeah.
And so, would I want the worst for that man? Perhaps yes.
I run for US president.
And then perhaps, would I seek in myself forgiveness for that man eventually, as the Bible
Yeah.
or whatever my religion says?
Right.
Yes. That would have been my answer.
You think that would have saved the debate? no?
I think if you're already leading the polls, I think that's a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
Again, I've thought, I've this is a thought that crosses
Actually,
once every 3 months. I think of
What's
Michael
Iran's
Dukakis.
Roman Empire?
But that is to say, in this discussion, wanting this murderer and this rapist to be set free after 25 years of showing rehabilitation, of serving the minimum life imprisonment that India deems appropriate, it is one of those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was one of those questions whether it should have been the death penalty or not. It's one of those questions where
It takes me back to Javed Iqbal's case. When the judge in Javed Iqbal's case announced that absurd verdict where his body will be chopped up, put in a vat of hydrochloric acid in
the
town
same
square.
way he murdered his 100 victims.
Exactly like that. There is a part, I'm sure, in all normal, empathy feeling, good humans, that's like, that kind of sounds like, it sounds fantastic. But then there's a part of your body that goes, this can't be how we run society at all.
At all.
And I think so many of these questions kind of boil down to that
So,
essence.
In this case, and I know we are discussing a lot,
Yeah.
but in this case, and honestly, I'd love to have a discourse in the comment section about what you guys feel. And I would say give it some thought before having a knee-jerk reaction, because I'm also having knee-jerk reactions to this, is if he were to apologize and show remorse, then releasing him can be considered. But without remorse and without acceptance, absolutely not. Absolutely. No matter how good
A lawyer you've become in jail.
or how good a person you've been in jail,
Yeah.
fundamentally, you need to apologize and you need to show remorse.
Yeah.
Showing remorse is a very important factor. Showing
Absolutely.
remorse is what let one of the factors that helped Manu Sharma
Right.
be forgiven after him serving the
Right,
minimum
right.
punishment. So that is a very crucial factor that, as some activists clearly say, he hasn't shown that. So that's my caveat to whether he should be released or not.
Now, as we wait for new developments in this case, we must remember who is waiting along with us. Chaman Lal and Rajeshwari, both long gone, maybe in a more peaceful place, finally reunited with their daughter. They sacrificed their health, finances, and peace to pursue justice. They grew older in courtrooms. They lost friends who were tired of hearing about appeals. They aged prematurely. When Chaman Lal died in 2012, a journalist noted that he had died, quote, with justice half served, end quote. Rajeshwari died not long after. Their surviving children withdrew from public life, finding no solace in the system. We wait on behalf of all of them. If you ask an 18-year-old now, she might recall Nirbhaya or Gauri Lankesh, but not Priyadarshini. This is the tragedy of public memory. The human mind can only hold so many horrors. But you all keep that flame alive. Today, nearly 3 decades after January 23rd, 1996, somewhere in the alleys of Vasant Kunj, a small flat remains a home to someone. New tenants live there, maybe oblivious to the history those floors and those walls and those doors hold. They can keep the flame alive. And maybe on certain evenings when the winter fog rolls in and the street lights flicker and a dog barks in the distance, we all might imagine hearing the faint echo of a helmet hitting a floor, just so we can all keep the flame alive. If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.